the Vietnam War, most soldiers never saw the man who killed them. There was no warning, no sound, no second chance. Somewhere in the jungle, two men were lying perfectly still for hours, knowing that the first one to move would die. They never spoke. They never saw each other's faces. Only one of them would stand up and walk away. This is the true story of a single shot that ended one life and haunted the other forever. At dawn in central Vietnam, the day did not arrive with light. It arrived with humidity. The air was so heavy it felt solid, pressing down on everything it touched. Leaves were wet. Soil was wet. The camouflage fabric clinging to Carlos Hathcock's body was wet. Even his breath felt damp as it moved slowly through his lungs. He had been lying there since long before first light. He did not check a watch. A sniper does not measure time in minutes. He measures it in patience. There were no birds, no insects. The jungle was unnaturally silent. Hathcock knew what that meant. A forest only becomes this quiet when more than one predator is inside it. He did not arrive at his position. He dissolved into it. 3 days earlier, he had begun moving forward, inch by inch, crawling through mud and low vegetation. During daylight, he did not move at all. At night, he moved so slowly that an ant could have crossed his sleeve without noticing. This was not something taught in manuals. It was learned from nearly dying. His rifle was wrapped in cloth and layered with local vegetation. Not fresh leaves, but decaying ones, carefully chosen so their smell matched the ground around him. Sweat ran down his back, but he did not wipe it away. Every unnecessary movement was an invitation to death. In Vietnam, a sniper was never truly alone. If no friendly presence could be felt nearby, then the enemy was close. At some point, the feeling arrived. It did not come through sight. It did not come through sound. It came from the spine. The sensation that someone else was watching the same stretch of ground, breathing the same heavy air, waiting for the same mistake. Hathcock did not turn his head. He did not narrow his eyes. He did nothing. In a sniper duel, the first man to doubt himself does not survive. Somewhere ahead of him, another man lay pressed into the earth. He was not a target. He was an equal. Hathcock would never know his name, never know his unit, never know his age. But he knew this. The man ahead of him was highly trained. No one could remain motionless for hours in this heat, with insects crawling across exposed skin, unless he had been conditioned to treat stillness as survival itself. An hour passed, then another. The sun climbed higher, but its light never fully reached the jungle floor. Heat thickened the air. Muscles began to tremble, not from exhaustion, but from resistance. The body does not want to remain still this long. This was when most men died, not from bullets, but from instinct. Hathcock bit gently into the inside of his cheek. Pain sharpened his focus. He counted his heartbeat. He did not think about water. He did not think about home. His world was reduced to the space in front of him. Then it happened. It was not movement. It was not sound. It was a pinpoint of light smaller than the head of a pin, flashing and vanishing in less than a second. If someone had blinked, they would have missed it. Hathcock did not blink. Reflected light, optical glass, a scope, another sniper. The distance was several hundred meters. The margin for error was nearly non-existent. If the other man saw a reflection first, the engagement would end without warning. Then it happened. It was not movement. It was not sound. It was a pinpoint of light smaller than the head of a pin, flashing and vanishing in less than a second. If someone had blinked, they would have missed it. Hathcock did not blink. Reflected light, optical glass, a scope, another sniper. The distance was several hundred meters. The margin for error was nearly non-existent. If the other man saw a reflection first, the engagement would end without warning. Hathcock adjusted his scope so slowly it was almost imperceptible. He did not aim at a body. He could not see one. He aimed at the exact place where the light had appeared. This was not confidence. It was mathematics, experience, and a narrow edge of chance. He exhaled, held half a breath. His finger rested on the trigger, but he did not pull it yet. At that precise moment, two men, separated by hundreds of meters of jungle, were doing the same thing. Both were still. Both were waiting. Whoever moved first would live long enough to tell the story. Hathcock did not rush the moment. He had learned long ago that urgency was a lie the body told the mind. The jungle did not reward speed. It rewarded restraint. He let the rifle settle, let the muscles relax just enough, let the sight picture become absolute. The tiny point of reflected light had vanished, but he knew where it had been. The human brain, when trained long enough, does not forget distances. It remembers angles. It remembers geometry. Somewhere ahead, the other man was still there, still waiting, still breathing. That was the most dangerous assumption of all. The shot, when it came, was not loud. It was sharp, contained, a single mechanical action breaking hours of silence. The recoil was minimal. Hathcock had tuned the rifle for this exact purpose. The barrel rose and settled before the sound fully reached the trees. There was no return fire. That, more than anything else, told him the truth. Hathcock did not move. This was the mistake most men made. They fired and immediately shifted position, driven by instinct, by fear of retaliation. But retaliation required a living opponent. Seconds passed. Then more. The jungle remained silent, as if it had absorbed the sound and refused to give it back. Only then did Hathcock begin to move forward. He advanced the way he had arrived, slowly, deliberately, without lifting his body from the earth. Every meter forward felt heavier than the last, not from fatigue, but from awareness. Closing distance meant closing certainty. It meant replacing imagination with reality. He did not know what he would find. The body appeared first as a shape, not dramatic, not posed, just another form pressed into the dirt as if it had always belonged there. The rifle lay aligned with the ground. The scope faced forward, frozen in the exact position it had held moments before. Hathcock approached from the side. He did not touch the body immediately. Training and superstition merged at this distance. Then he saw the scope. The glass was shattered. Not cracked, not chipped, destroyed. The bullet had entered directly through the front lens. There was no deviation, no deflection. The path was straight, unforgiving. Behind the scope, the man's eye had been in perfect alignment. Hathcock did not need to examine further. The mathematics explained the rest. This was not a trick shot. It was not luck in the way people wanted to believe. It was the convergence of two men doing everything right, and one of them doing it a fraction of a second later. Hathcock felt no surge of victory, no satisfaction, only a deep, unfamiliar stillness. He studied the man briefly, young, older than some, younger than others. There were no documents, no markings that meant anything to an American, just a uniform worn thin, boots softened by months in the field, hands shaped by repetition. This was not a legend. This was a soldier. Hathcock withdrew the way he had come. No trophies, no confirmation team, no photographs. By the time he returned to friendly lines, as the jungle had already begun reclaiming the space where the man had fallen, as it always did. The story did not become famous immediately. In reports, it was a line item. One engagement, one enemy combatant neutralized. The details lived only in memory. Years later, when Hathcock spoke about it, he never exaggerated the shot. If anything, he diminished it. He understood what people wanted to hear. He refused to give it to them. In sniper schools, instructors would repeat the story, not to glorify the kill, but to teach restraint. They emphasized the part most listeners ignored, that the man on the other end was just as patient, just as disciplined, just as skilled. Hathcock himself said it only once in a quiet interview. If he had fired first, he said, I wouldn't be here talking about it. There was no bitterness in his voice, only certainty. The shot entered military history because it was rare, but it stayed because it revealed something uncomfortable. That war is not decided by heroes and villains. It is decided by moments so small they can fit inside a piece of glass. For years, the shot existed only as a rumor. It moved quietly through units, passed from one sniper to another, stripped of names and locations. Some heard it as a lesson. Others heard it as exaggeration. A bullet through a scope. Perfect alignment. Instant death. It sounded impossible. Among experienced marksmen, the reaction was rarely disbelief. It was calculation. They measured the distance in their heads, the size of the lens, the angle of reflection, the probability. Most concluded the same thing. Unlikely did not mean impossible. As the story traveled, it changed. Some versions added dramatic pauses, others added impossible distances. A few turned the moment into something supernatural. Hathcock disliked those versions the most. They removed the human cost. When asked directly, Hathcock never corrected people aggressively. He listened, then simplified. Yes, the shot happened. No, it was not magic. And no, it was not something to be chased. He explained that the most important part of the story was not the bullet. It was the waiting. Two men lying motionless for hours, knowing exactly what was at stake, trusting discipline more than instinct. That was the part worth remembering. Some critics questioned whether the event had been verified. There were no photographs, no recovered rifle entered into evidence, no official citations celebrating the act. But that absence was normal. Vietnam was full of moments that left no paperwork behind. In the years after the war, military historians debated the story's technical aspects. Ballistics experts agreed on one thing. Under exact conditions, alignment, distance, ammunition, optics, the shot was possible. Rare, but possible. Hathcock himself had little interest in winning arguments. He never framed the story as proof of superiority. He framed it as proof of danger. When young snipers asked him what the story meant, his answer was always the same. Never underestimate the man you cannot see, because if he is there, he has already done something right. What stayed with Hathcock was not pride, it was proximity, the knowledge that survival had depended on a margin so thin it could not be measured. A fraction of a second. A breath held slightly longer. A reflection noticed just in time. He spoke rarely about the man on the other end, but when he did, he never used the word enemy. He said, "the other sniper." That choice of words mattered. It meant the difference between a target and a human being, between a story and a memory. The story endured not because it was impressive, it endured because it was honest. It admitted fear, it admitted chance, it admitted that skill alone was never enough. In the end, the shot through the scope was not a lesson about killing. It was a lesson about restraint and about how close every man in that war lived to the edge of disappearance. The war did not end when the rifle went quiet. For those who survived, Vietnam followed them home, not as memories they could choose, but as moments that returned uninvited. At night, in silence, in habits that never needed explanation. The jungle stayed with them, long after the uniforms were gone. Hathcock returned to the United States as a decorated Marine. On paper, his story was simple: success, recognition, legacy. In reality, the war had already taken something that could not be listed in citations. What stayed with him was not pride, but awareness, how close death had been, how narrow survival truly was. When asked about the legendary shot, Hathcock rarely lingered on it. He redirected the conversation to training, patience, control, knowing when not to fire. He believed responsibility did not live in the bullet, but in the decision behind it. In sniper schools, the story eventually became formalized, not as a legend, not as proof of superiority, as a warning. Instructors emphasized what mattered most. The man on the other end was just as trained, just as disciplined, just as careful. That detail changed everything. It removed arrogance, it replaced it with respect. The war ended, but the lesson stayed. Every trigger pull leaves a mark, whether anyone else sees it or not. Hathcock believed the story did not belong to him anymore. It belonged to the next generation, not as legend, but as responsibility. Because somewhere, someday, another man would lie still in silence, and the choice he made would matter far beyond the shot itself.